Not yet. Du sagst auch irgendwas, ne, dass ich weiß. Vincent?
Yes.
There you are. Okay, fine. Dauert noch.
Technique is something so great these days, right?
Welcome, a warm welcome to the Kolloquium European Societies in Digital Age. This is Sabria David speaking, and with the colloquium we are dealing with the challenges of digital societies from a European perspective, and one of the formats is a video colloquium, and you are now guest of the video colloquium to the topic Europe a Wish Concert, Visions for a Europe of the Future. So we will be talking on the importance of visions and narrations for such a big thing as Europe. And I'm really happy to have brilliant guests here. We are setting up communication space where we let people meet who wouldn't have met before. We already heard that Ulrike and Vincent have met 2 years ago, but I'm sure no one of you met Stamen, so that's a bit a point also to mix people and cross borders and countries and languages, and all of us have to use English as a bridge. So we all of us excuse ourselves for not being perfect because it's not our native language. But I think better a not perfect conversation than none. I'm Sabria David, Slow Media Institute. I'm setting up this project with the Gustav Stresemann Institute. Michael Münz will be in the room later. And with the EU-Kommission and the Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung, which is the Federal Agency for Civic Education. And yes, now I would like you to meet my guests. I'm really honored and looking forward to that discussion. We'll start with Ulrike Giraud. Would you please present yourself in short?
Well, thank you for inviting me to this digital platform. My name is Ulrike Giraud. I'm a professor for political science and the study of democracy at the University in Austria, in France. And I'm also the founder of the European Democracy Lab, which is a little think tank exploring new ideas for Europe and which is based in Berlin.
Okay, thanks a lot. I heard you on the lecture a few weeks ago, Ulrike Giraud in Bonn on Europe. That was really interesting, and I thought I need you on the discussion because we're having a set of video colloquiums around the European elections, and I wanted to have the first on the big picture. Why do we need vision? So it was obvious we needed you. And now, Vincent Engel, please.
Yes, hello, Adol. I'm Vincent Engel. I'm a teacher in French literature at the University of Louvain in Belgium. I'm also a writer, and I write columns on the website of Le Soir, which is one of the main newspaper in French here in Belgium.
Okay, thanks. So this is also where I met you first in an article in Le Soir. So we have already, as countries, we have Germany and we have Belgium and France a bit. So we have this is the view now, and now we have Stamen Belche, please. You have a view which we don't represent until now. We have the Eastern European view from young people. So, Stamen, please.
Yeah, I will try to do my best and represent the views of at least young people I know in Bulgaria. First of all, who am I? My name is Stamen Belchev, and I'm a master's student of political science at the University of Bonn. I also work as a student, helped for the Federal Agency for Civic Education in Bonn.
Okay, so thank you, Stamen. To explain, I met Stamen I have been on a lecture by a Bulgarian author Alek Popov. And in the discussion later, Stamen said something which I thought was really, really interesting. He said in the discussion after the lecture, he said, we were talking on the Bulgarian view on Europe, and that the effect that countries that are not yet in the EU strengthen the common aspects, the common cultural aspects with Europe, and in that moment, then they are in the EU. There's a backlashing into traditional things, a bit nationalism. You were talking of proto-Bulgarism, and what you said, Stamen, is you said, when will we start to be inspired by future and not by the past? And you were saying that for Bulgaria, but I thought this is a really interesting question, and we can transpose that on Europe, because I think also in Europe we have the point where we have to start to be inspired by future instead of past. And I was thinking of narratives that are backwards and forwards, and maybe I thought the point that the backwards vision, so no more war, yes, that was a common experience, because war was a collective experience, and saying we need EU because we don't want any more war, that was something common. Because Vincent, in your article, you said les gens manquent un mythe rassembleur.
Mm-hmm.
So what I thought is that a mythe rassembleur, a myth that unites people, has been no more war, so long as a war was a collective experience. And so maybe because I'm a social romantic, I thought it's a sign of being in a post-war period. So the vision no more war doesn't work. We need a new future-bound vision. So my first question to you, Stamen, is what do you think of that? Is that do you think that that's okay with what you thought, what you said?
Yes, I still believe in what I said, although I should tell you, in preparation for this discussion, I talked with a lot of friends, because I actually never had a discussion with them about Europe. And most of the things they told me had nothing to do with the old narrative that you presented about Europe, that Europe is about peace, that we have to learn from the past experience of World War I and World War II, and to not let this happen again in the future. No one, I say it again, no one of my friends told me that this is why they like the European Union. So this old concept for me, which is also very important because it's a good basis for all that we have achieved until now. I'm not saying it's the best thing for the future, but until now it's a good thing. It's not even being considered among youth, among the young people in Bulgaria.
Okay. That's interesting. Vincent, what do you think? Do you think that this is a Central European thing?
I don't know. Yes, I guess it's probably more true in the east part of Europe, but maybe there's also a difference between generations, because Europe was built on the basis that the horrible history we had together for more than for quite a long time, for a couple of centuries, should stop. And Europe is one way to understand Europe is based on history and on memory, and that's why what we call in French le devoir de mémoire is very important, but also it has been used, and now I think it might become something negative because of the way it has been used by politics and other people. But Europe as a peace project cannot be done without memory, without history, without a vision of the past. But what's interesting is that what you said, that the young people in Bulgaria, and probably it would be more or less the same here, even though in schools they have a lot of classes and of talking about this past because of what happened during the war, the Holocaust, and things like that. So it is still very important in the education system. But what if we stay on this vision based on the past, we will miss the future. That's true, and that's what Harari said in his book. It has been translated in many languages, and Homo sapiens, and the next one is Homo Deus. He said that all civilizations have been built on stories, on myth. For example, the human rights has never been proved scientifically. It is something that we believe in, and because we believe in this, it has become a reality. And today we don't have any myth, and people don't understand how Europe will improve their everyday life, and because we don't believe it's the same in every country of Europe, and most probably around the world, because we don't have this. We need stories. We need to say it like it. We need fictions to make things happen.
But this is. I'm sorry if I'm taking the word here, but I think that this is also very. It's a nice basis, but we cannot pass the future. Of course, this one, but this is a good point. Like the common myth, although in the case of the European Union, it's not a myth. It's history, something that we cannot pass. But the future is also important to discuss in which direction are we going to take this myth and develop it? Where do we want to go?
And what do we want? We try
and if we have an answer, we become a nation. I mean, Benedict Anderson's theory of nation building is that the moment you develop the vision of a common future, you know what you are doing, you know what you are striving for. That is the process of nation building. So it's both. I think there's a dialectical momentum. We talked a lot about the past and the culture of memories, and yes, very important. But I think the dialectics is that it's only past and future. Yeah, you need to come from there, and you want to go there. So imagination of the future is basically the definition of what a nation is in Benedict Anderson imaginated nations.
But what do we have until now? This is also what I'm interested in. Since I kind of understood that most of my friends and most of my the people that I know in Bulgaria, the young people, they actually don't have a lot about they don't have a lot of information about the European Union. This is one thing that was remarkable, how little they know. Almost each and one of them told me, I'm not sure that the thing that I'm going to tell you is right, because I don't know. So they have little to no information about the European Union. But the thing that almost all of them mentioned was the borders. So the things and the open borders and their possibility to move between states, to go from Bulgaria to Romania to Hungary to Greece without any passport check. This is the thing that strikes them the most, and most of them know that they profit not only culturally and not only financially, but also culturally from this. And this is a very good part of it. But I'm wondering, how can we, as young people, not understand, or we are having trouble to understand that the openness of those, the free movement of people around Europe is exactly built on this common myth that we know. The common
Yeah, okay, if I can chime in there, I think, I mean, first Ivan Krastev wrote this marvelous book about European twin light, and he details, Bulgarian colleague of yours, but he details very much that sort of personal experience are really shaping the narrative. So if the experience of many Bulgarians is that the smart people leave the country to go to work to Brussels or to Berlin or to Paris, and then you have the left behinds in the country, you shape a different idea of what Europe is, yeah, obviously. So I think we should not be sort of, in French I would say béaba, which is sort of naively sort of happy, there's the free movement of person. Yes, there is free movement, but the free movement can fold into two sides. It can fold into a voluntary side, which is I'm young, I'm smart, I leave the country, I can go for my liberty and work in Barcelona or Paris. But it can also be the opposite, which is I must leave because my country is a structurally poor region of Europe and I have to leave to work elsewhere. And then my grandma stays home and perhaps even my kids stay home and I work where my family is not, and then you get a different narrative of Europe. And I think one problem is that these two narratives are really not matching between West and East. As far as I know, I'm not a specialist of Eastern Europe, though I travel a lot, I shall tell. But the Western sort of free movement of person is rather this Erasmus style, Barcelona, London, Paris sort of, yeah. But if you're in the East, it's more a necessity thing. You need to leave for a better work, better income sort of thing. You leave your family behind. You have regions which are structurally defavorisés, and it impacts of how you look at Europe. And I think we need to bring the two things together, that free movement of persons, people can have a positive connotation and a negative connotation. But if you have to leave by force, then you do not really resent the European Union as perhaps a favor.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what this, at least in my opinion, is the how should I say it, the root cause of young people leaving their home countries? I think that this is because of exactly what we talked at the beginning, what Sabria mentioned. They don't want to get expired by the past, so for them the future is Europe. That's why they move. And since in their own country they find only the past, only the nationalistic, only the conservative, they want to move. And since they have this possibility, they take it. And this is also why I asked Alec Popov on this discussion and this.
I agree on this. You know, just to not be mistaken, I agree on this. But it's still a difference whether you leave, say, a Polish village as a medicine to get a better pay and a better job in Berlin, than when you are an unemployed, whatever, Hungarian or Romanian, and you leave to work in a low-paid sector in Western Europe. It just makes a difference. And I think we need to talk about the two segments of society if we want to put it all together and to have a paradigm sort of how to unite this Western and Eastern perspective, but also what Vincent said, which is the generational perspective. There is a big difference between the older and the younger, because in my understanding from what I experienced traveling a lot after 2004 through Eastern Europe, it made a huge difference for the people there, how old they were when the European enlargement came. It makes a difference in the moment of freedom. Have you been 20, 40 or 60? Yeah, and I think this impacts today on the political economies, because if you have been 60 at this moment in time, you rather feel that my life has been stolen. I'm a grandma in Romania. My daughter is now in Berlin. I don't see my little grandchildren. Yeah, if you are a 25-year-old in 2004, you feel like, wow, now for me, Paris, London, Barcelona, and I get a super paid job. Yeah.
And I'm not sure to go back to the idea that moving in other countries in Europe is the best way to build the future, because if you stay where you are just in the past, and because it's a problem all around Europe. It's not a problem of Bulgaria. It's everywhere in Europe. Nationalism is coming back, and what was one of the main positive impact of Europe, which is the opening of borders and the possibility to travel freely without any borders and any visa. It is very fragile, and that's amazing how young people consider this is natural, although it is not, and it hasn't been for centuries. And it's and like every improvement in individual rights, it's very fragile, and we can go back very easily. And so the only just traveling in Europe is not sufficient to build the future. It has to be built in every country of Europe, and this is not exactly the direction we are taking now.
I totally agree. And not even built in every country, but in every village, in every town. Yeah, everybody needs to be stable and in Europe without traveling like hell. Yeah,
exactly.
I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, a real interesting point, which I haven't thought before. That maybe, what do you think? The revival of the concept of nation is not only the fear of others, people, foreign people coming in, but also having own people leaving. What do you think? What would happen with the European Union without borders? What would leaving mean then?
Look, honestly, I think the question is mistaken. What I think is, and you know, the way you presented us, you said, for instance, Vincent is a Belgian, but nearly a little bit French because he speaks French, yeah. But so you had a
he's publishing in Le Soir.
Yeah. But still, you had a national paradigm to present him, yeah. Essentially, you know, it's probably truer to say, is he Flamand, is he from Wallonia, yeah? So what is the regional affiliation, rather than saying he's half Belgium and half French, yeah? So I think to what I want to come with is, we are talking so much about this renationalization, the national feeling. I think they're not determining our lives. I feel that people do not wake up, and there are many statistics on this, but people do not wake up in the morning questioning sort of, where's my nation, yeah? The nation is not what is in Germany I would call Heimat, yeah? It's completely, there's a German poll who says that only 7% of Germans answer, was ist meine Heimat? What is my Heimat? And they say my nation. 93% answer my town, my region, my friends, my church, my family. Yeah. Yes. So what we need to distinguish, and I think this is the solution for Europe, is that we all need identity, and we do not want to travel too much, as Vincent said, and we need our Heimat. Yeah. But you can disentangle this completely from the state unity, which is the hybrid structure around you. Meaning, my Heimat is across the corner from Vincent. I'm from North Rhine-Westphalia, somewhere in the near of Cologne. But I do not wake up in the morning to question myself whether the people of Hamburg in the north or of Munich in the south belong to Germany. Yeah. So the disentanglement between the feeling of identity and Heimat from the overarching, say, state model in which you are organized as citizens might be a solution for Europe, in which we do not need to attach the identity to Europe. We leave the people where they are, with the Heimat they have. We just build a state unity around them.
That is what you said with Europe as a republic, and maybe, of course, it's that nation is a real backward concept, and what you said is that people need identity, and Macron was writing his new appel. He was addressing in whole Europe les citoyens d'Europe. So I was thinking of who is the European citizen. And for example, Alexander Gerst, the astronaut, he says in his Twitter biography, European of German nationality. And Engin Karahan, whom we had also in the convention last year, he addresses himself as Muslim in Europe. So what do you think, who is the citizen of Europe, the future citizen of Europe?
I would say, because I'm quite against any nationalism, and I really join Ulrike with this project of European Republic, but I think it will take, sadly, it will take a couple of years, even more than a couple of years. I think what makes you a European is because you want to be part of this project. You want to be part of this adventure. Because you believe that what Europe did the best, inventing and defending human rights and developing democracy is something very important, and you want to share that, and you want to live that. And I don't care. I really don't care to be Belgium. It's not. I'm not ashamed of that, and I think that should be the European feeling for someone who feels European.
Can I make a little remark? Because I looked at figures recently. I think I don't care for being a Belgian, statistically at least, is not right. Most Belgians have an identity, and the identity is either Flamand or Wallonie. So identity is culture, Flemish or Wallonie.
You forget Brussels.
Language also.
But where you care for being Belgium is basically social security and health system, because that is the national level that holds you together despite different identities. And what I want to bring into this talk is that all depends on how we define a nation. Vincent said, I'm against nationalism, so, yeah, but only if you define nationalism. I didn't say a nation is backyard. I didn't say this. I just said that we need to distinguish the levels of Heimat and of state building. Yeah, that's a different thing than saying that a nation is something backyarded. But what is essential, I think, is the definition of a nation. And we should not define a nation essentially through cultural identity and Heimat, because there are many civic definitions of a nation. I already mentioned Benedict Anderson, a nation is an imaginated community, or you can go with Ernest Renan, a nation is a plébiscite de tous les jours, or you can go with Marcel Mauss, who's a French sociologue, and who said that a nation, and that's the Belgian case, the nation is institutionalized solidarity. That is, where is your solidarity institutionalized? So you feel Belgium in the civic side of the solidarity and not in your identity side. And I think this opens a gateway for Europe, because we could institutionalize solidarity on the European level, in which case we would have a sort of European nation in the definition of Marcel Mauss, but then say everybody as identity or culture has the Heimat where he belongs to. Yeah.
Yes.
But
yes.
sorry,
Please.
Yeah, I wanted to bring a point here. This might work in Western Europe, and I'm sorry that I'm making this division, but when I say in my own land, my Heimat, so my this concept, this German concept of Heimat, this exists only in the national context. When you ask where you're born, where you're from, no one will tell you I come from Eastern Bulgaria or I come from Western Bulgaria. They will say I come from Bulgaria. This is for the majority of Bulgarians. I cannot speak for all of the other Eastern Europeans, but that they will tell you this is their Heimat. So the solidarity level that you were speaking about, there is a difference between Eastern and Western Europe. And since we still see the division between East and West, this is also something we should consider. So the solidarity, at least in Eastern Europe or in Bulgaria, in my case, is on the national, purely on the national level. And there's also one thing I want to mention about being European and seeing yourself as European. A lot of young people, I cannot say if that's the majority or not, but a lot of young people, and especially the older generation, they don't understand themselves as European. You will ask them, okay, you're a Bulgarian. Do you see yourself as a European? And they will say, and they say it not because they don't want to identify as a European. They say it from like it's a type of shame. Like, I'm not worthy of being European, because they can see what's happening around them. They see the backwardness, they see the nationalism, they see everything like that, and they cannot break themselves to say, I'm part of the common European culture and the common European experience. This is something that I'm not trying to make a point, I'm trying to bring it up in the whole discussion.
I have a question also. Maybe a European vision is, what do you think, is a European vision too transnational to be supported by national governments? Because if you see on what Macron proposed last week and on the reactions were very national. So how could we, or is it possible to overcome this?
Well, again, I mean, I think we won't go far in all this discussion about nationalism and Europe and Euros versus nation if we do not define what a nation is. And I go with, you know, what Stanford said about Bulgaria, and sort of you have no level to, other than the national level, to feel your Heimat, yeah? But this has really much to do basically with the fact that the Eastern countries in Europe, in difference to most of the countries in Western Europe, are not federated countries. Bulgaria is 8 million country, right? It's not like 80 million federation of Germany, which in itself has the Saxonians and the Prussians and the Bavarians and the Rhinelanders and so on and so forth, or not like Italy, where you have Umbria and Apulia, and you see my point, yeah? Or like Wallonie and Flamand. So many of the today's new nation states, let's think about a second that these are news. I mean, I remember 89 when we had Czechoslovakia, yeah? The Czechoslovakian nation, which a little later became the Czech Republic and the Slovakian Republic. So what a nation is always submitted to change. And the distinction you were pointing to, and I agree with you, has much to do that in the Western part, we have no longer federated states in a way, but small states, Czech Republic, Slovenia, Slovakia, Romania, all basically around 8 million, 10 million or smaller. Yeah? And I do think that this is a very important sort of element of distinction. But I think precisely because of this, what perhaps brings us further in the discussion to not hang around with this nation, European sort of thing here, is to define the nation as the level on which you share solidarity, and to not define nation essentially through identity minorities and so, because even in Hungary you have Bulgarian minorities and Romanian minorities, and you have Romanians in Bulgaria. You are basically multi-ethnic and multilingual even within Bulgaria and even within Romania. So congruency of language and congruency of culture is not a significant element to form a nation. Most European nations as of today are multi-ethnic, multilingual. And so I just propose that it's not so helpful to always go back to identity and culture to think about the essence of what a nation is. And I think what may help us for Europe is that if we define Marcel Mauss, I really recommend that book to all the listeners, Marcel Mauss, The Nation or the Sense for the Social, in which Marcel Mauss defines the nation as the entity in which solidarity is organized. And I think that's a gateway to a different Europe.
Vincent?
That's a big project, and it's the most important. But this is going to be very difficult because you have so many different levels of solidarities around Europe. And what, as you said, maybe in Belgium, what makes us feel Belgium is the social security we have, and it's a high level social security. And what people mostly are afraid of is that this solidarity is going down, and that you don't have any the main politic projects we have today is not solidarity, is selfishness, is everybody takes care of himself, and at the individual level or on a collective level. And of course, I agree with that. We have to build a Europe, a European identity based on solidarity, but this is not exactly what is
happening. I agree.
happening. Yeah.
But we're talking about European visions, right? And visions.
Yes.
So
Yes,
that's the vision I will
think
fight
it's
for,
really
because-
good to look forward.
Yes.
It's so, it frees the mind sometimes to think how we can wish something.
If I can, if you say to people that Europe is going to exist on the basis of solidarity, and if people are afraid that this solidarity, European solidarity, will be less generous and less effective than the one they have in their country now, you will never build a European identity.
Yes, I have a question at that point. How do you see the role of digitalization in that context? So maybe there are people who say that in digital times, first it's transnational per default, and you have also new tools and structures also to build solidarity and new tribes and new common goods. What do you think? Is that a point that that can help us getting closer to the vision of a Europe based on solidarity?
It's just a tool. It's a tool. It's not in itself. Techniques is nothing. It depends on what you do with it. It can be the best and the worst. So, and because now, you know, I think that for many people in Europe, digitalization, it's not easy to say.
Bad word, yes. I'm afraid of that word also.
Is not real. They don't use it. They don't use it because it's too complicated for them, because they don't have a good network, and because they don't understand how it works. They don't understand what it can do, or they just use Facebook. Or so this is not a solution in itself. It's a tool that may be a part of the solution, but it can be also a part of the problem.
Just to underscore what Vincent has said, you know, but look at the atomic bomb, which was the technology invention of 100 years ago, yeah? And since 100 years, mankind is dealing with the question military use or civic use, right? Mm-hmm. As much as most people agreed that military use is forbidden, and the United Nations ruled always on, you know, as much as we say civic use should be permitted. And I think the internet, it's still open, whether it's a supporter for democracy, transnational teachings and talkings like we do in this nice sort of hour we have here, or whether we get the whatever analogy to the military Jews of the internet, sort of we get the darknet and we don't get our democratic structures through the internet. I think this question is wide open, whether we can use the technology for the good or the worse.
Mm-hmm.
Stamen, what do you think? Maybe it's also kind of a generation aspect. For example, something like Youth for Climate. Would that have been possible without digital connection? What do you think?
I have to agree with the other discussioners here that it's a knife with it's two-edged knife. So as when we talk about environmental issues, it definitely helped. So it definitely helps people connect, and it's still helping people connect in my own country, where, for example, there were big environmental protests, and those could be achieved only with or mainly because of the connectivity we get with the internet. So the first problem I have with the whole thing is that what do we understand with digitalization? Because when I'm giving the example of quicker organization of people, at the same time, I'm thinking about fake news and how much quicker they travel around the world, and they influence all the people who are not used or do not know anything of a certain topic, and the first information they pick up is some fake news, which is pushing the discussion in the wrong direction. So again, it can be quite helpful, but at the same time, it can do immense damage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what you also said is what the point of solidarity. You, all three of you, I understood you in that direction, said that European vision would have a chance if it were built on solidarity. And what I have the impression is that those two terms, elite and social justice, are mixing up with all this Europe discourse. How do you see what is the reaction? What is the what do you think could be the way to make that happen in a good way?
Look, I think Vincent said everything, which is there is a desire in Europe that we have a solidarity in Europe. We see Gilets jaunes in France, but we see Gilets jaunes in Belgium and in Italy, Cinque Stelle and Greece, and so we know that we have a social crisis. We know that we produce a large-scale social crisis through the way that we fixed money. You know, the banking crisis that we had for a decade now in the continent. And so I think there's a very interesting dialectical momentum. We have this desire for a stronger solidarity in Europe, but Vincent is right that the tendency of the time goes into the opposite direction. And what we see in reality is that whenever Salvini says, I need more money, I want to have a basic income for the Italians, and that rises, and the EU doesn't give me this rises the Italian populism for the Lega Nord. But whenever Salvini says this, then the Germans say, the Italians want only our money, and so this rises the opposite German populism. So what we do have is reciprocally fueling right-wing populisms. The more the Italians say, we need money and the EU is hindering us, the more the Germans say we do not want to pay for the Italians. And this is reciprocally building up. But besides that, in the same world, most people in Europe want a Europe with stronger solidarity. So there are two truths here. Yeah, the one is the wish, and we know we should strive for, and we know we should work it out. And the other is a path-dependent dynamics that we treat this today in populism, which are building against each other in a reciprocal way.
Stamen?
I want to say that I totally agree. We need a common European solidarity. My question is, on which ground are you going to build this? What will be the common element? Because it cannot be the nation, it cannot be the Heimat, it cannot be the culture, because most of the Europeans are culturally different. Here I want to say something very interesting, which I don't know if a lot of people in Western Europe understand, that most of the citizens in Eastern European states trust the European technocrats much more than their own government. And that's why I'm really, as an Eastern European, very excited about the office of the Persecute, the office of what was the name? this new institution that was built now, and it's going to be headed by this this lady from Romania, the head of the prosecutioner's office, exactly. A common European ground where justice can be distributed. And I think that this is a good ground to start building our solidarity on the basis of justice in the European Union. I don't know if you quite understood me here.
Maybe is that like Vincent, you wrote in the article on the Gilets jaunes, you quoted Alessandro Barrico, who was writing on the promise of participation by digitalization. So we are on digitalization, but not in a tool way, but in a way that being connected and having access to knowledge is a promise of participation, but that didn't lead to social justice, and it didn't lead to a good way to where common goods are fertiled, missing the word. So what do you think is that maybe the good and the dark side of digitalization, that you have the promise of participation, but only the promise, because the rest is as it was, injustice?
The problem that Barrico was talking about is the problem of elite. How you say in English? Elite. Okay. I said if you are able to play what he calls the game, so if you are connected, if you speak many different languages, if you know how to use all the tools you have on your smartphone, then you are part of this elite, European elite and world elite. And this is not, and this, because you are part of the elite, you have, and that is also what he pointed, that being part of the elite makes you responsible. You have to do something because of that. And it's the difference between having the right to do something or having to do something. And most of the elite today, they just think they have the right to do whatever they want, and they have no responsibilities. So people don't believe in them anymore. And that's a problem. I think that one of the most interesting things in the project of Ulrich and building this solidarity in Europe is the problem of citizen sovereignty. And what has to be done for Europe is to think in a complete different way the institutions that are ruling Europe. We have a big problem there of democracy, because you have the Parliament, you have the Commission, you have the Conseil, the Council, and people in the Council are a state prime ministers and presidents, and they care about their own interest and not on Europe, and they can stop everything. And this is the worst way to build a European solidarity. So I know I changed the way of the question, but.
No, but it's very important, because what you said is the crisis of today. We do have a huge crisis of representation in the institutions of the European Union, which do not reflect, in the Rousseauian sense, le volonté générale of people,
Exactly.
Which is that heads of state of government only take decision with their national narrative and never look at the European citizens in large. The best example is that we have statistical evidence that, for instance, say 2/3 of European citizens would accept the European unemployment scheme, which would bring European solidarity into the system. And this is volonté générale of the European citizens. But this volonté générale of the European citizens is not reflected in the institutional path dependency of the European Council, because in the Council you have the German heads of state and the Austrian and the Dutch one who decide against the European unemployment scheme. Yeah, so this is a huge crisis of lack of institutional representation in the European system, and it points straight to the problem of the role of the today's nation states in the European institutional system.
So I'm really sorry to say that our brilliant hour is over now. So I would really love to go on talking with you, and I would be really glad to have you in another discussion later. So maybe we come to the last question I want to ask is. As psychologists say, it's never too late for a good childhood. And maybe we can say also for Europe, it's never too late for a good myth, and it's never too late for a good vision. So my last question would be for now, last question would be to you all, if you had a wish how you want to have European vision where we can all address to what would that be? So not thinking of is it realistic, can we do that, and just a Wunschfee.
Let me go in because my battery is empty and I may drop out at any second.
Yeah.
So I have one dream and one thing for Europe to wish for, which is that if we want to have one European democracy, the necessary, though not sufficient condition for democracy is that the citizens of this democracy are equal in front of the law. And they are equal in the things which are le sacre du citoyen, to quote Rosa Valland, which is voting, taxation, and the social. So my wish for Europe is we build the next European project on the principle of political equality of all European citizens, independently of where they come from.
Yes, thanks a lot, Ulrike Giraud. Now, Vincent Engel, what would your...
I share the same dream. I dream of a European republic, but which will be also generous to the rest of the world. It's not the purpose is not to build a VIP citizenship for European and all the rest of the world to forget it. So we have to share that, because I think that's what Europe has built, the most important thing that Europe has built.
Yes, thanks a lot, Vincent Engel. Now, Stamen Belchev, if you said that Eastern European young people don't know what Europe is and don't have a vision. So, if you have one, and what would your vision be? So you can go to Bulgaria and tell everyone about it. What would this be?
This is something I already said. Justice, as it goes in the same direction as what my colleagues also said. Like all citizens of Europe could be on the same level in front of the law, so that we start at the same level. This is also a dream of mine, and a lot of Bulgarians, I think I already mentioned that, feel like they're a second-hand citizen inside the European context. If we can get rid of this feeling, this will be the first of the big steps that we can make towards a more integrated Europe.
Oh, I thank you so all. This is so great. We have a Europe as a social project based on justice and solidarity. And yes, that's so great. I thank you a lot for this discussion, and I hope we can continue this in another whichever format. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ulrike Giraud in Berlin. Thanks a lot, Vincent Engel in Louvain. And thanks, Stamen Belchev from Bulgaria, but now in Bonn. So thanks a lot. We all are European citizens, and have a nice day.
Goodbye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye.